back to Book Nerd TV. Today we're going to be talking about a short story called Bloodchild by Octavia E. Butler. This short story was originally published in 1984 for Isaac Asimov science fiction magazine. It was published again or republished as a part of a collection of short stories by Ms. Butler called Bloodchild and Other Stories. I believe, if I remember correctly, that was published in 1996. Let me start by saying that Miss Octavia Butler is an icon for me in American fiction. I have been a fan of hers since I was probably in my teens, for sure early 20s, when I ran across her books. My favorite genres were, of course, science fiction and fantasy. So here is Miss Butler, who is writing in these genres, or in this genre for sure, science fiction. And I was just blown away simply because she existed. And that let me know that not only could I consume science fiction, fantasy books, but that it was possible if I had the discipline and the creativity that I could actually maybe write these books myself, because I've seen it happen. Miss Butler is there as this example of someone who has written books in these genres, whereas before or up to that point, it was just mostly white males who were writing science fiction and some white females that I was aware of, or that those were the books that I was coming across, and that held true as well for fantasy. Octavia Butler for me is an icon, is an inspiration. She is on that pantheon of authors that I look to and that I enjoy. I was lucky enough to see an interview with Miss Butler. I think it was this was years ago on Free Speech TV, if I recall correctly. And not only is she a talented writer, she was also a brilliant thinker. She really deconstructed some of the issues that we were having, and at that time, some of the issues that we were having around race and economics and the political system. So just watching her in that, that made me, if it was possible, it made me an even bigger fan of hers, I guess. Stan, I think the kids say these days, but it made me just really appreciate even more sort of the brilliance and the creativity and the mind that Miss Butler had. So she is an icon for me. She remained an icon for me, and I guess I can start maybe talking about the short story Bloodchild at this point. Bloodchild, for me, is a story with many layers. And let's remember that this is a short story format, so there's not a complete novel that you have many pages to world build. This world has to be built fairly quickly with enough of a story to get you into the world and being aware that, okay, I don't have 300 pages to build this world. I have to build this world up within a page or two so that I can then go ahead and tell the story. Miss Butler does this really well in this story, Bloodchild. I really, really enjoyed it. Bloodchild centers on Gan, who is a young boy coming into his adulthood, coming out of his childhood, moving into adulthood. At his current age, Gan has to make some decisions that will affect not only him, but will also affect his family. And because of that, there are some choices that Gan must make that will affect him personally, has the possibility to affect his siblings, the rest of his family, and his community. Gan and his family live on a preserve on a planet that is not Earth. So the backstory to Bloodchild is that these African-descended humans have left Earth, or an Earth colony. And that they left Earth, or said colony, because they were experiencing oppression, enslavement, violence, and so they're fleeing Earth, or Earth colony, and they're going to any inhabitable planet that they can find. the planet that they find is inhabited already by these beings called Telic. I'll spell it for you, Tlic. So I say Telic. The pronunciation may actually be different. So if it is, I apologize, but that's what we're going with for this video. So the Terrans, I think they're called in the story, land on the planet where the inhabitants who already live there, the Telic, are there. The initial encounters between Telic and Terran are violent and bloody, as one might think. The violence is only stopped when the Telic and the Terrans agree that they'll stop their shooting wars and that a preserve will be carved out for the humans who have landed on the planet. So the Telic and the humans agree upon these preserves that are for human habitation. So only humans live within the preserve. I believe there are some like administrators or whatever that can come into the preserve and visit families, but it's not like the majority of the Telic aren't allowed on the preserve. Consequently, humans are not allowed off the preserve unless they're accompanied or in the company of one of the native inhabitants. They cannot leave unless they are escorted by a Telic. So that's the background for Gan and his family and the community that lives on this preserve. So there's this major plot device here that I don't want to reveal because it kind of may spoil the rest of the story, but I can tell you that Gan's decision, once again, affects his family, affects the Telic family that he's associated with or that his mother has been friends with for her entire life. And his either making a decision or not making a decision can affect one of his siblings. So I don't mean to be cryptic, but again, it's really important that I not divulge what that particular plot device is, because it reads better to me if you don't know, because I didn't know when I went in to read the story. I had no idea what the story was about. I thought, hey, well, and let me get the book. I had the book already, and so I thought, okay, well, let me read the book that I just started with the first story of the collection. I was going to say that the story was post-apocalyptic, and I guess in a way you could think of it as post-apocalyptic, but really, I guess it's about the immigration of these African-descended people to this new planet and their search for freedom, safety, and a future. And so the question that rose to my mind after reading the short story was, is that something that they found? Because let's remember, they're relegated to this preserve, and they're not free to move about the country, as it were. They have to stay within the preserve in order for them to stay safe. Is that freedom? Something else that came to mind for me with Gan and his circumstances is, how can Gan make a free choice if his family and community are limited by geographical boundaries? You're on this planet, but on this planet you can only exist in these smaller areas, right? So is that freedom? Despite whatever decisions Gan may make for himself that affect his family and will affect his community, is the choice or choices freely made? Because he's limited literally by geography of where he can go and where he can't go. And it's not only true for Gan, it's also true for his family. It's also true for everyone in that community, everyone in the preserve. So is that freedom? Is it a better freedom than what they would have had they stayed on Earth or in the Earth colony? And so, of course, that makes me think about choices people make outside of the story. So people in IRL, choices that people make. And while they may not be limited by physical boundaries or geography, they may be limited by economic circumstances. They may be limited by educational circumstances. And so I guess really the question that I took from this book is, what is freedom? How do you define freedom? How do I define freedom? Am I less free because I don't have the opportunity to choose from the widest range of options? Or am I free because of the options that are available to me? I'm able to pick from that limited range of options, but I'm free to pick from said limited range of options. I don't know. That may not have been the point of her story, or the question that she intended for someone to ask, but it is a question that came up in my mind. So I will say that in the book, Miss Butler provides commentary directly after the short story. She provides some commentary or her thoughts about the short story that you've just read. So, and I'm not, of course, going to reveal that either, because again, it kind of ties back into that kind of the subplot that I have not told you about. I realize that by leaving out some of the plot points, I'm not really telling you the entire story. I really don't want to spoil the story for you, but what I think I may do going forward is sort of give an impression of the book initially, and then at some point, let you know that I'm about to spoil what happens in the book. And if you want to cut off at that point, then you can turn the video off at that point. And then I'll go on into more detail about the story so that I can give a little more information about the book. If you've read the short story already, what did you take away from the short story? Did the thoughts about freedom come up for you, or did you take something else away? If you'd like to discuss them, or at least let me know what they were, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'd really appreciate the interaction. I highly recommend that you read this short story, and actually I recommend that you get the book so that you have the collection of the short story, because actually contained in the book is a short story that I happened to listen to it was either Clark's World podcast or it was Escape Pod podcast, so it's one of those two. So if you didn't know, I'm a huge listener of podcasts, and so I listened to the story was The Evening, the Morning, and the Night. It was really, really good. And so that short story is contained in this collection as well. And of course, I'm probably going to discuss it at some point. Maybe not anytime soon, but I'm probably going to discuss or give my impressions about The Morning, the Evening, and the Night as well. Really enjoyed that short story. So get this collection if you like, or again, I think it's either Clark's World or it was Escape Pod, where I listened to another short story contained herein, and it's called The Morning, the Evening, and the Night. I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you like the video, please leave me a like. If you're enjoying the content so far, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to be notified when I post a new video, go ahead and click the notification bell so that you'll get the notification. And don't forget, there's always time to read. See you later.